Hey everyone, Theo here. In this video, I want to talk about the differences between Windows tablets versus iPads and Android tablets from the perspective of an artist. Now this video will not cover drawing performance because I want this video to be useful regardless of which specific model of tablet you're buying from, whichever company you are buying from. So I want to talk about the workflow as well as the things that you can and cannot do with each tablet. The biggest reason to buy a Windows tablet is because it runs Windows, and because it runs Windows, you can use desktop apps. Some of these drawing and graphic design apps are also available on iPads and Android tablets. For example, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, Clip Studio are available on the iPad. On Android tablets, you can find Clip Studio, Medibank, Paint, and Krita. The main difference between the desktop version versus the tablet version of the same app is the desktop version will have all the features, whereas the tablet version running on iPad or on the Android tablet will only have a subset of features. For example, this is Photoshop on the iPad, this is Photoshop on Windows desktop, and the workspace for the desktop app is very configurable. You can move the toolbar around, you can pull out the tablet and move this around, you can even dock this to the left side, but the workspace on the iPad is not as configurable compared to the desktop version. Tablet apps are usually designed with minimal user interface to make the best use of the limited space on the display. So in order to change certain settings, most of the time you have to make the palette appear first before you can adjust the settings. Whereas on the Windows tablet, you can usually have the palettes appear all the time, and you can adjust settings very easily, just tap and adjust. So you don't have to hide and unhide the palettes, which to me feels quite unproductive. Tablet apps usually provide more support for finger gestures in addition to the usual zoom, pan, and rotate. For example, with Photoshop on the iPad, you can use two fingers to tap to undo, whereas on the Windows tablet, there is no shortcut support for two-finger undo. To counter the inconvenience of having very limited finger gesture support, some Windows tablets actually have hotkeys by the side, so you can customize hotkeys to undo or other shortcuts. With Windows, it's possible to install and run utility apps such as hotkey apps on top of the system. Even though Windows tablets have limited support for finger gesture shortcuts, having soft keys or shortcut buttons like this can be as useful as finger gesture shortcuts, or even more useful sometimes. With Windows, you also get the proper and very familiar file management system. File management on Android OS is quite similar to Windows, so that's good, but on iPads, it's not as simple and sometimes it's quite convoluted. For example, if you want to upload a file, iPad OS will ask you whether you want to upload a photo or choose from the files folder, but a photo is a file as well, so why is there a need to have two separate options here? One important thing you need to know about iPad OS is most of the artworks that you create, the files are actually saved within the apps. So if you want to open that file with some other app, you have to export it first, import that file with the other app, and then open the file. So there are several steps involved. With Windows, it's so easy to open files regardless of the app you use. For example, if you want to open a Photoshop file with Clip Studio Paint, you just open Clip Studio Paint and open the Photoshop file, which is already saved in the folder somewhere on your computer. You don't have to export, import, and then open. With Android tablets, you can choose to use apps that save files externally into the file system, or you can use apps that save files within the apps themselves. And if you use those apps, same thing applies. You have to export, import, and open. Windows is just more versatile. For example, there are some apps that are just not available on iPads and Android tablets, such as the software for color calibration apps, the drivers for scanners if you need to scan your artwork. The hardware for Windows tablets usually has more features as well, such as a better selection of ports. So for this tablet, for example, there is a USB-C port here and a USB-A port here. Some Windows tablets also have HDMI ports. For iPads and Android tablets, we are usually looking at one single port. Some Windows tablets actually let you upgrade the NVMe SSD, and some have the micro SD card slot for expandable storage. With iPads, there is no way to add more storage after the purchase. Some Android tablets come with the micro SD card slot, so there is possibility to expand storage. Let's talk about backups. For Windows tablets, you can use Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, or Dropbox, and those cloud services will back up the files on the tablet. However, some custom user settings or app settings may not be backed up. For the iPad, you can use iCloud to back up everything, including user settings or app settings, or you can connect the iPad to a computer to back up everything. For Android tablets, you will have to do some research for the backup system that it uses because the backup may not back up everything. So what are some of the obvious advantages of iPads and Android tablets versus Windows? The most important one is the apps on the iPad and Android tablets are designed for touch with finger gesture shortcuts in mind. So those apps work really well with fingers even if you do not have a keyboard connected. Second significant advantage of iPads and Android tablets is battery life. You can easily get 8 hours of battery life with iPads and Android tablets. Battery life with Windows tablets is usually not good. For example, with this Link Studio S1 tablet, battery life is 4 to 4.5 hours. With the Huion Canvas Pro 16 that I reviewed a few months ago, battery life was around 4 hours. With Microsoft Surface Pro tablets, it's around 5 to 6 hours. Windows tablets tend to heat up quite easily, so there is inefficiency with the processors, and when the tablet heats up, the fans will rev up and that will use more battery. Many Windows tablets have built-in fans because heat is an issue. So these are the grills for the fans. So which tablet should you get? My general recommendation is usually this. Choose based on the apps you want to use. For example, if you just want to draw, you can choose any 3 because there are many capable drawing apps on all these 3 platforms. If you want to do graphic design work, if you want to use apps that handle vector, typography, and layout, go with Windows or iPads because there are more graphic design apps on these 2 tablets. On the Android tablets, there are many drawing apps, but there is a lack of graphic design apps for vector, layout, and typography or text. If you already have a computer, whether it's Mac or Windows, then I don't think it's necessary to get another computer. You can go with iPad or Android. If you don't already have a computer, I would highly recommend getting a Windows tablet because this is running Windows, and Windows OS is very versatile compared to iPad OS and Android OS. Regarding drawing performance, I would say the drawing performance of the iPad with Apple Pencil is quite similar to the Samsung tablet and the Samsung S Pen. The drawing experience is going to be slightly different, but the performance is kind of similar, and the drawing performance is going to be slightly better compared to the Microsoft Surface Pro. Now this tablet, the Link Studio S1, actually has very similar drawing performance to these 2 tablets. Anyway, when it comes to drawing performance, you have to do more research because every tablet will have slightly different drawing performance and experience. Anyway, if you guys want to do research on drawing tablets, pen displays, and pen tablets, you can check out the many reviews that I have written on my blog and also created on this YouTube channel. All the links are in the video description below. Alright, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye!